Nigeria's external reserves have hit a 7-month low after falling to $38.57 billion as of May 25, 2020. According to the report from the Central Bank of Nigeria on movements in external reserves, the reserves, which have been fluctuating for weeks now, experienced its lowest of $39.01 billion and $38.39 billion on October 10th and 8th, 2021, respectively. It will interest you to know that Nigeria has not been able to take advantage of Russia and Ukraine war to boost its FX earnings from crude oil sales and gas supplies amid the shortage of supply in Europe, as the European Union is planning to reject Russian energy as a form of punishment for invading Ukraine. Amid various interventions by the Apex Bank to boost the local currency, the reserves have continued to shrink, causing banks to tighten access to foreign exchange to travelers and other legitimate users as scarcity bites harder. About this, let's talk more about this, and I have an investment research analyst with United Capital PLC, Mr. Ayorinde Akinloye, joining me via Zoom. Ayo, thank you so much for your time. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much for having me on the show today. It's always a pleasure to be around. Thank you.
Yes, our reserves are down 7 months low. Let me ask you the question this way. It's like all of the efforts of the central bank, the greenback is defiring all of these moves and it's still hitting hard, and the naira continues to bleed by the day. What is happening?
Well, I think basically it's about looking at it from to the two sides, right? From the demand and the supply side. So first, when we look at the demand for dollars, the demand for dollars has continued to rise in the Nigerian economy persistently. First, you look at the fact that our imports bill has increased significantly, with the price of crude oil now at multi-year highs. What that means is the cost of importing petrol, right? Because crude oil is the raw material that we export crude oil and then we buy petrol and other petroleum products that are being refined, right? And the cost of these refined products have gone up significantly as a result of the increase in crude oil price. So on that front, we have had to spend more dollars, to import petrol, to import food items, considering the fact that there's a lot of inflation across the global economy. So that has basically increased our import bill. The second thing is you also consider the fact that we are in the summer months, and typically in the summer months, you would always, have people who are traveling for vacations, people who also have to make school fees payments, would also demand for dollars, particularly as we approach the summer break. And once the summer break is gradually coming to an end, we begin to see all those demand trickle in. Then you also had to eat that Nigeria has a lot of foreign debt. We have a lot of foreign debt. We issue euro bonds. We also pay interest on a couple of loans from financial institutions beyond just the euro bonds that we issue, right? And I'll just give a bit of context. This month alone, this month that ends today, the month of May, we paid about $297 million in interest payments on our coupon, as interest payments on our Eurobond issuances, right? So, and that is not going to sort of abate over the next couple of months, because we are still going to have to make quite a lot of payments. Between June and September, we are going to be paying about $1.1 billion, to service our dollar denominated debt. So all these things are creating additional pressures on external reserves. The fact that we are spending more to import fuel, we are spending more to import food, we also have to service our international debt payments. All these things are issues that are draining our reserves, and unfortunately we are not able to earn as much. So when you look at the fact that crude oil production has declined significantly from the 1.92 million barrels per day we used to do before the outbreak of COVID-19, we are now doing about 1.4 1.5 million barrels per day. That is a significant decline. So we are not able to, almost all what we are earning in oil proceeds we are using to service in terms of importing petroleum products, in importing food items and all. So we are not really earning much in forex, whereas we are spending a lot in terms of forex. And then when you put into context the effect of the election activities, on dollar demand also, then you get the full picture of why the external reserves have actually been declining, particularly in the past month. So when you put everything together, servicing international debt, election demands for FX, when you also look at the fact that we're not earning as much, and then you had the typical summer demand, then it becomes clear why we have been seeing the pressure on external reserves all through the month of May.
Great stuff there, Ayoride, as usual. Like you said, before now we knew exporters, manufacturers, of course, regular travelers, BTAs, PTAs will always need FX. But the new entrants are the politicians who need the FX for whatever. That's to be proved though. But we hear all of these things and see pictures and all of that online. But I'm looking at the roles of the Bureau de change operators now. Many will say that these guys are there to bridge all of these gaps. And the CBN has refused to grant them access to Forex from the Apex Bank. Do you think we can bridge this disparity with this continuous, not giving Forex to these guys?
Well, I mean, basically, the truth is in most climes, in most economies, the central bank does not supply the bureau de change dollars for them to sell. The only reason why it's the case in Nigeria is because we don't have a lot of dollars. We have to conserve the ones that we have. So typically what we have seen from the CBN is during periods when they know that they are going to face pressure in terms of FX, we see that they don't supply dollars. They try to cut off supply of dollars to the BDCs. So it's not surprising that we have seen that play out this time around. So basically, yes, we cannot continue to rely on just the CBN supplying dollars, but unfortunately it's the situation where we find ourselves, and it just basically points to the fact that a lot of work needs to be done in order to increase the pot of FX earnings that we have in Nigeria. So it's not even just about, because even if the CBN begins to sell dollars to the BDCs, it's not still going to do enough to alleviate the pressure, because the CBN houses maybe majority of the dollars that we have in the Nigerian economy. And we know that even what the CBN has is not adequate enough to sort of take care of the demands, the dollar demand of the broad-based economy. So it's going to be, it's basically beyond just supplying dollars to the BDCs, right? Yes, there's that part, because failure to supply dollars to the BDCs would mean that there's an increase in the gap between the parallel market rates and the official exchange rates. But that alone is not even, that alone does not guarantee improved liquidity of FX. What we really need to do is look at how we can improve the pot of FX inflows that comes into Nigeria as a whole, in terms of our export earnings, in terms of, remittances, in terms of foreign portfolio inflows. How can we drive improvement across all these different sources? That will be the key driver of improving the FX situation in Nigeria. CBN supplying dollars to BDCs will not necessarily solve that problem, because even the CBN does not have enough dollars to go around. It does not have enough dollars to supply to the BDCs to continue to fulfill retail FX demands. So what the CBN is trying to do is supply dollars to the banks, and then would say Nigerians should go to the banks for whatever dollar needs that they have. But the truth is, the CBN is not even having enough dollars to supply to the banks, which is why over the past few days or past 1 week now or few weeks, if you go to the bank to apply for your personal travel allowance or your BTA, your business travel allowance, you would typically get that delay. You might be told to come back maybe after a couple of days or after a couple of weeks in some cases before you can get the dollars, because banks are not getting enough FX inflow from the CBN. And it's understandable, because the economy itself, the Nigerian economy itself, is not earning enough FX. If the Nigerian economy is earning enough FX, then there'll be enough to go around to meet all these obligations, and we won't be seeing the pressures that we are seeing. So it's not just about the BDCs, it's not just about CBN supplying dollars to the BDCs, it's about, is there enough dollars to even supply to the BDCs? If there's enough dollars to supply to the BDCs, then CBN would likely resume sale of dollars. I mean, this happened in 2015 when we had the similar crisis. CBN stopped sale of dollars to the BDCs, but by the time we saw recovery in 2017, crude oil prices recovered, our production recovered, and we're earning more dollars. CBN began to sell dollars again to the BDCs. So if the situation improves, then we would most likely see the CBN resume those sales, and that would improve circulation of FX. But as long as the CBN does not have enough dollars to supply, then I don't think we can't expect that they will begin to supply dollars to the BDCs, and we should expect this FX scarcity and crunch to continue for a bit of time to come.
Great stuff. Let's now talk about the $200 billion FX repatriation from non-oil exports, also instituted by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Let's look at some of the key areas and how well are we faring? Are we getting there? Have we started value adding to export facility, non-oil commodities expansion facility, non-oil FX rebate? These are the schemes under that same scheme. How well are we taking advantage of our export base to generate more FX?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, the solution to Nigeria's FX problem, is not the long-term solution, right? To Nigeria's FX problem is increasing the size of FX we earn, increasing our ability to earn FX. Because if you increase your productivity, if you increase what you offer to the external or to the global economy, they will pay you for it. And in paying you for it, they pay you in dollars, right? They pay you in FX, pounds and other whatever currency the transaction is done in, right? But the problem is the machineries and the systems that need to be put in place to drive this increase in our FX inflows. Because like I've mentioned, devaluing the Naira in the short term may attract foreign portfolio investors, and we'll get some dollars to come into the economy, and then in the next 12 months, we are back to where we are. So these policies, yes, they are good short-term measures, but the truth is the long-term solution is to increase that FX pot. And the CBN's RTX 200 billion plan for non-oil exports is one that actually should solve that problem if properly implemented. Now, but the challenge with implementing that policy as at now is, one, the CBN alone cannot push this through. The Monetary Policy Authority alone cannot push this through. There is a need for cooperation from the fiscal authorities to ensure that the $200 billion target is achieved. And how will this be done? First, the main focus is to be on agriculture, right? The first focus is on agriculture, to see how we can add more value to agricultural produce, because a lot of the agricultural exports we do are in their raw form. They are not processed. Many of them are in raw or, semi-processed form. So what the CBN is trying to do is, let us create facilities, let us create avenue for our farmers to be able to process this raw agricultural produce into more finished states, even if it's not totally finished, right? Even if it's not final goods, but into at least semi-processed, semi-final, or close to final goods, right? And we can export these products out, and we're able to earn more instead of just exporting just the raw material, which will earn us less. The perfect example is, instead of exporting crude oil, why don't we export petrol? Why don't we export diesel? Because we earn more by doing that. So that's like what the CBN governor is trying to achieve with that policy. But the truth is, with the focus on agriculture, first, we need to solve the insecurity problems. Because if insecurity is not solved, farmers will not return back to the farms. Number two, we need to work on our agricultural infrastructure, the infrastructure of the entire agricultural sector. And when we're talking about this, we're talking about our storage facilities. We're talking about our transport facilities. We have to resolve issues around our land laws. How do we give lands to farmers? What was, we have to we have to basically resolve the issues around complexity around our land laws. That's something that we need to work around. Number four, we need to educate our farmers and help them understand new processes, new methods of farming, such that they are going to have high quality outputs. Because it's not that we don't even produce some agricultural products, but the truth is a lot of agricultural products are not acceptable in the international markets because they don't meet global standards. Why don't they meet global standards? Because maybe the inputs you are using are not right, the farming methods are not right. So the fourth thing we need to do is to try and educate our farmers and also implement policies that will attract the commercial private sector to deploy funds in agri. For example, we have a lot of funds deployed in, we have strong private sector presence in telecommunications, in cement, in banking. We need to have that kind of private sector presence in the agricultural sector. But the only time we would get to that point is when the federal government or the fiscal authorities make the sector attractive enough for these private sector players to invest the quantum of funds and the amount of money required to revive that sector and help the CBN achieve that 200 billion non-oil export proceeds target. And unless we are able to implement these things, then it will just be another policy that is basically playing to the gallery. The CBN alone cannot push this through. Fiscal authorities and state governments across the country must work together with the CBN to help achieve that objective. And if we're able to get it right, if the RTX 200 billion non-oil exports policy is achieved, then it will be a significant game changer for the Nigerian FX space and for our exchange rate problems. But unless these other parties come together to cooperate with the CBN, then it will be a big struggle to see that policy come to limelight. And that is why we have not yet seen any major progress so far since the CBN announced that policy.
In one word, as we wrap up now, with the present scenario, this decline might continue.
Yes, definitely. As we're looking forward, we think that this situation is still going to continue. Like I mentioned, I think when we're talking about the first point, why we've been seeing the pressures, right? I mentioned the fact that we have, for example, next month to June, we have to pay foreign investors who invested in our Euro bonds. We have to pay them $300 million in maturities, because the debt is going to mature next month. We are going to pay coupon on that instrument. In July, we are going to pay another round of coupon. In August, we are going to pay another round of. Between now and the end of September, for example, we're going to be spending close to $1 billion to service debts, international debt obligations. That is going to come out of the external reserves. So that's automatic. That's already set in stone that that is going to be drawn out of external reserves. And unfortunately for the federal government, they are unable to access the international debt market right now, to maybe borrow some more dollars that they can at least use to absorb the pressure that they are going to face, right? And that is the unfortunate situation that we have, because yields on our Euro bonds are now very high in double digits terrain. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense for them to approach that market. So basically, we expect that decline to continue, and we expect to continue to see this pressure on FX. It's just for manufacturers, for businesses, and for consumers to continue to persevere until hopefully one day we are able to get it right to boost our FX earning capacity, and then we could maybe say our FX problems could now become a thing of the past. But for now, over the next 3 to 6 months, these pressures will remain, and it's about manufacturers and businesses adjusting and looking for ways in which they can cope with the pressures.
All right, I must thank you so much for your time there. Investment research analyst, United Capital PLC, Mr. Ayorinde Akinloye. Thank you so much. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much for having me.